by Oliver Anthony, and let you listen to the words again that makes a statement about where we are politically. So let's listen to the song again. We played it last week, and I had heard it for the first time then. I've listened to it a couple of times since then, and I want to play it again for your benefit. Hopefully you get something out of it a second time around. John, can we play that now?
My soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. 'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end. 'Cause the rich men, north the rich men. I wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. 'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end. 'Cause the rich men, north the rich men. I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay.
You know, that's right. That's a real provocative song. And I think that what it reminds me of, by the way, is what we had a lot of in the 60s and 70s during the protest period, when people would get in the street when there was something that pricked their conscience and something that was outlandish enough that these politicians were doing. They go out and protest it, call a rally, and bring people in. I remember going to Washington one time, and they had the great Joan Baez. John, you remember her? Joan Baez?
Oh, yeah, I heard about her when I was a kid. A lot of she was more on the left side. The thing about Oliver Anthony, he just came on stage. He's not on the left, he's not on the right. He's trying to be more of a speaker for the local control. That's what he advocates for. And that's the big difference. Joan Baez and all those other people they're still more concerned about the central government's actions.
Yeah, I think we can, the singer of the song Richmond in North of Richmond, I think we can quantify his politics. He is to the right of center, certainly, and I do understand he does not want to be pigeonholed into any of these two camps that are warring with each other, because he's trying to bring about unity. His song is about uniting the people who are the dispossessed, or Amity Slade's book, The Forgotten Man, the book she wrote about the time, the 1920s, the 30s, in that time period. And I would add the Forgotten Woman also, but the men were the ones working at that point, and the women were in the household. And there are a lot of reasons why that's not true now, but it was true at that time period. There's a lot to be said here about things that have happened and gone awry in the country, and want to one day get a chance to talk about what occurred. We'll have a discussion about that at some point. But I think we can say that this protest song is in a tradition of other protest music has been sang by other artists, and this is right up there with the best of them. I can relate to it because I remember going to Washington back in the early 1970s. I went to Washington, D.C. to support Cesar Chavez and that movement of the United Farm Workers. This is before we had this problem of persons coming into the country. All of this immigration stuff that we have going on right now was not going on then. And in fact, if it had gone on, I think that what would happen is that the United Farm Workers would have been the first one to stand up against it, because they were trying to unionize the farm workers that were here legally, and this breaking in would have disorganized what they were trying to do with the organization of the UFW, United Farm Workers. And I went there to support Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers organization, and they had there Joan Baez. Now, you couldn't get a more humanistic type of person than Joan Baez, who was always trying to be around causes that she felt would bring about greater unity of humankind, and uniting people and things of that sort. That's what they were about. She was on the left, but they were singing music about some of the problems that were happening in the country and trying to unify. Before you talk about we are the world, and you got 50 people out there and they're from one country and they're talking about we are the world. Before this kind of thing. I'll say something about that in terms of the song Richmond for Richmond too, because I can tell you about some of that, some of the things that he does in that song here that has something to do with we are the world kind of understanding of what they're singing about, because they're not the world. They're 50 people from the United States. It was like you were saying, you have the World Series, and you do have some players now from outside the country, but the World Series at one time didn't even have black players on it. So this idea of the World Series, and you didn't have anybody from Dominican Republic. You didn't have this guy they have there on Cincinnati's team. I don't watch a lot of baseball, don't have a lot of time for it, but they got this one guy over there as a left-handed batter, and this guy is the most exciting player on the field right now. So if they have a World Series now, it's more of a World Series now than it was back in the time period when you had Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra, Willie Mays. Finally, they got blacks in there in 47, 48 with Jackie Robinson, and then you had and they were just and they were just in the National League, and the National League was always beating the American League because the American League was limiting the talent pool, and they weren't doing the National League. National League had Willie Mays over there, Hank Aaron, Roy Campanella played with the Los Angeles team. They call them the and so I think that they. The Brooklyn Dodgers was at that point. And anyway, the point is that it was a World Series, but it really didn't have a whole lot of players that played outside the country. So it's not really a World Series. It was this part of the country playing that part of the country, and then inside the country only had a limited number of the people playing out there in the field until Jackie Robinson broke through, and and that's a whole different discussion there as well. But the way I relate that to the song is that I don't think that Oliver Anthony is singing about the world. He's singing about the United States. Now you could say the world, but he doesn't mention it anything from the standpoint of what's happening in the world, other than the fact that some of the things that we should be doing here for the citizens of this country is going outside to these people on these islands, and we're doing more to attend to their problems than we are the problems of the United States. But it's basically what's gone wrong with the American experiment. That's what he's singing about. And I see him as a kindred spirit. I can really relate to the song because I consider him to be a kindred spirit to my own view, because I really love the fact that he is not coming with this partisan nonsense that you are either this party or that party, you call yourself this name or that name, and that creates more friction, which none of that is true, that you're not any of that which you're claiming, because there are no Democrats. I'm going to tell you this again, as I've said before, and I'm singularly the person saying it, and none of these persons out here qualify. I'll tell you something. I tell these scholars something. I lecture to them all the time. I want to call them out. I keep calling their names out. I call Alan Dershowitz name out. They know I'm out here. And they don't open their mouths. And they better not open their mouths when it comes to the Constitution, because I understand it better than they do. I'm trained in this area, and they're not. And they better keep their mouths closed, because what they're saying is not true. And I'm kind of mad about it, because I think it's a reflection upon their disrespect for the framers of this country. And there's a whole lot of that going around. And I'm not going to tolerate it without speaking out about it. Because anything that this country achieved and made this country great, it starts there. I'm I'm even perturbed, quite frankly. If you want to get me started on anything, some people invite me to these tea party things and dinners and stuff like that. That's fine, but I'll tell you, if you want to get me started, you start putting anybody in our conversation above George Washington. I'm gonna tell you right now, you're gonna get a fight. Because I can tell you something here. Nobody, and we've had 46 presidents, really we had 45, Cleveland was president 22 and 24, and I'm going to predict here, unless they do something crazy and stop him, Trump is going to be 45 and 47. They can't stop him. I mean, they can stop him, but they cannot do it legally and constitutionally. Let me put it that way. They can't do it legally and they can't do it constitutionally. And I'm a constitutional scholar, and I will tell you something. What they're doing, trying to stop this man, they can only do it through a pathway that is paved with illegality and unconstitutional acts. Constitutionally, the man cannot be stopped, but they don't intend to apply that. And I'll hopefully get a chance to say a few things about that as well. But in terms of let me slow myself down because I'm getting too excited here. But if you want to get my dandruff up, you start messing with the Constitution of the United States, you start messing with the founders of this country, I got to fight you on that because I understand that very well. And I don't think anybody's better trained in this area than I am in the whole country. And I'm going to be focusing on this up until November the 5th, 2024. And I'm doing it for a reason. I think that after 2024, if the country doesn't get this thing right, and we don't get the right people in to the power structure, the right person in there, and I'm going to just be honest and tell you who that person is. There's only one person that's out there that will be the right person for this job, and that's Donald Trump, who the people sent up there in 2016 to go in there and fight these people. That's what they did. And that's what he did. Now, that was great. He did a great job for the 4 years he was in there, but I tell you what he didn't do and couldn't do. He could not, in fact, alter the way the swamp operates, and they eventually got him and forced him out. That's what happened in 2020. and they did it. They didn't care what the verdict of the people was. They'd already determined what the outcome of the election was. If Donald Trump got 12 million more votes than he got in 2016, he got 63 million votes in that year, and then 2020 got 75 million votes. His vote his vote totals went up by 12 million more votes, folks. Now contrast that with the person that ran a crusade in this country in 2008, and you saw all of the people wanting to go to Obama's rallies, and people have not understood that yet. And I've got to give a discussion at some point about that, because I can tell you this, and nobody else has said this, and nobody has studied this. Obama was groomed to be the president when he was at Harvard University. That's how far back they had determined to put him on a path to the presidency. And I'm going to prove that in future discussions as we head toward 2024, because they're trying to act like this has nothing to do with 2024, and that's why I'm trying to be kind here. This prosecutor named Jack Smith, appointed by Mary Garland to be the attack dog against Donald Trump. That's what he is. He's an attack dog. The man is a hoodlum. We have hoodlums in power right now. And Jack Smith is a hoodlum. I'm calling him out here. I'm taking the gloves off too. They're taking the gloves off. And from this point until the 5th of November, I'm taking the gloves off. And I'm going to embed myself in what the Constitution calls for. And I'm the single scholar in this country that's capable of doing it. And there's nobody in the country that can come behind anything I say and say otherwise. There's not one person qualified to do it. And I'm telling all you scholars to stand down. And there's Turley, there's Lawrence Tribe, certainly, and there's Alan Dershowitz. All of y'all being called out here. And all of you keep your mouths all of you will keep your mouths closed, because you're not qualified, not in this area here. And they know I'm out here, and I call them out every once in a while, and they never say anything because they understand what they're dealing with. They know. And they will stand down. I told them to stand down, but they will stand down anyway, because they can't stand up in this area here. They can't. They don't have this training in this area. They're lawyers.
But I think getting back to that song though, what is interesting is that man seems to know so much about history, but he doesn't allude to it. He just talks about the anger. But I think he's so frustrated because I think he has a real strong sense of what government's supposed to do and what it's not supposed to do. And I think that comes because a lot of people from the South have this real love affair with the Constitution that seems to be lacking in the rest of the population.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing about it too. I see in his song, he's talking about what the world's come to. He's not talking about the world, but he has this myopia that we have in this country. What we say, for example, America the Beautiful. Well, everything in the Western Hemisphere is America. You see how we gravitated from a single country to claim the whole Western Hemisphere as ours. We're doing it through the way we, in fact, title ourselves in terms of America. I remember my father we would go across Canada and we come back and they ask you, where are you from? My dad would say America. And they would say, well, where are you from? And he would say America. He started sweating because he thought he gave him the answer. And they wanted him to say, well, which one of all of his Americas? Latin is South America, Central America, North America. So West Indies, that's America. So what part of the West? My dad couldn't comprehend, because he had the same thing that's in this song here, what the world's coming to. But he's not talking about what the world's coming to, although it's coming to a bad place as the country's coming to. But he's not saying that in the song. He's saying what America's coming to, but he's imagining it as a global situation, but he's not saying about global. He's singing about what's happening here. And the global aspect to it only comes into the song when he's talking about how things that ought to be taken care of here rather than, for example, in Ukraine. That's why he says that they're worrying about the infants in an island somewhere when the children and so on and so forth are in despair, and they're in despair here in this country, and they are tending to their needs outside the country than the needs of the people in the United States. And that tells you where the priorities are. And you saw where Spence was, who really shot himself in the foot. He's not going to get close to the nomination in 2024 nor any time in the future. His career is over. You can forget that. Spence, you can go home now.
Tucker Carlson did us a great service.
Yes, he did.
You could see the anger in Pence, his scorn towards Carlson.
The mask is off, John.
Yeah, I know. And then it's like he's an elitist. He's this one. I mean, I don't know why Trump chose him to be as a vice president anyway.
Well, yeah, it's the same reason Obama chose Biden. You go into the network and get someone that has a marquee. It's kind of like inside the network. But yeah, he would if he. I can tell you this: he won't choose him in 2024. And Donald Trump now knows who are the swamp creatures. Okay, who are they? Let me give you the answer. All of them are. You see those person running against Trump out there? Those 8 person that was on that stage last week? Okay, which one of them? I'm asking you. Which one of them on that stage last week? And if Asa Hutchinson, Wilson, the billionaire, Asa Hutchinson was on the stage. I'm talking about the one that was not on there that's trying to get there because they say he didn't have enough votes, he didn't have enough support to be on the stage. He's trying to get on the stage to win over what it amounts to, and that's what they have to do, win over the voters that are now in Trump's camp. I'm going to tell you something, that's going to be a hard proposition. And the reason why I know that is because after the debate was over last week, Trump's numbers went up. You see what Trump did?
What I think is amazing, I'm seeing TikTok videos, and I can't remember all the people, but there's several of them. And a lot of blacks are responding to it, and he's gaining credibility with them because of all this crap they're putting him through legally. So.
Yeah, Donald Trump reminds me a lot, and then not too many people remind me a lot, and I don't want to put him up there at this level, but he reminds me a lot of the politics played by George Washington. George, you got to go back and read these biographies of Washington, because Washington was a consummate political figure in the history, and there are a lot of things Washington did that shows you that he was politically a heavyweight in terms of things that he did, and you can see it both before he became president and also when he was out there fighting against the British, who would expect him, for example, on the 26th of December 1776, the day you had to talk about the night before Christmas. Okay, here's the day after Christmas, John. And then he's over there going across the Delaware, knowing that the Haitians over there in Trenton were gonna be over there celebrating and so on and so forth. Probably gonna be up late at night drinking and all that, celebrating the holiday. They don't know George Washington is getting ready to cross the Delaware because he's losing his army and he needs to do something dramatic. Because they're on a time frame, they're going back home after their time was up. None of them were, by the time he got an army trained, they were ready to go home now because they only signed up for a limited period of time. And George Washington has to strike and do something dramatic, and that's what George Washington did. But in the presidency, he does things dramatic also that showed that he was politically astute on what he needed to do to, in fact, move the needle so the country could develop. That's George Washington. You can't put anybody up there above George Washington. Now, those of you that's going to call me, before you call me talking about he owned slaves and stuff like that, let me tell you something. Who didn't own slaves? And I'm not talking about George Washington, the slave owner, although George Washington was a slave owner. Let me say this first before you get mad. There are no good slave owners. You cannot own people and claim to be good to them. What you do to them is give them their freedom. So there are no good slave owners. I can give you a lot of apocryphal stories about that, and we'll do that sometime in the future as well. But in terms of what George Washington was within the slave system that had been inherited from the British, and what the framers are trying to do, all you scholars listen very, very carefully to me here. What the framers were trying to do is having inherited an institution which was practiced in some of the states and not in some of the others, but trying to bind the nation up, because after the war comes to a close, that which has glued them together, which is the King George III, that glue had been removed from them, and now there are 13 states out there acting independent to their own interests. And how do you glue that together? That's where the rubber hits the road in terms of how they had to do that, and they had understood that to accommodate differing interests, because each polity, and there were 13 of them, and each one of them was a republic actually able to act independent of the other republics, and they had to glue that and bind that together by recognizing the separate interests that they were bringing together into a United States of America. Before that, it was not a United States of America. That's why, who was it that said, one of the framers, it wasn't Paul Revere, I don't think. I think it was it was one of them that said, after there was the firing in Boston, at the Boston, they call it this is propaganda, they call it the Boston Massacre. Yeah, 5 people died. But the first person that died there, and blacks can claim, if you say it starts at that point in time, the shot heard around the world was March the 5th, 1770. That's when they had the 5 person shot there. But it's not at this time a war for independence. It's a war, what they were asking King George III for was an autonomy inside of the British Empire. Just throwing an olive out there of what would satisfy them if they could have their autonomy in there, the right to tax themselves within the empire, but stay within the empire. And when George III, arrogant as he was, turned that down, then they're going to make sure they did the AT&T, the Verizon. Can you hear me now? And what they they didn't. You talking about some people that flew up and picked their muskets up over a 3-cent tax. Look how much tax they're doing right now. And that's what this song is about. This tremendous burden that has overwhelmed the American people. He's not taking a Democratic side or a Republican side or any of that. What this man is talking about, and that's why we have such a resonance, why he has such a resonance throughout the country, is because you cannot pigeonhole him saying he's doing this to the exclusion of that. He's indicting both groups, because both groups have got us down, have brought this country down and got us in this situation. That's the glue this song is bringing about. This man is uniting this country.
What I'd like to know is, I mean, both stripes of people, the political sides, they're perfectly fine with taking taxpayers' money and sending it to other countries, billions of dollars a year. And it's like, then if we object to that, they act like we don't know what's going on with that, and we just got to trust them. Mm-hmm. I mean, basically, it's padding somebody else's account. The rich people of those countries are sending money to are getting wealthier. The people there who are supposed to be benefiting from that money being sent there don't get a single bit of it, or very little of it, if any. So, I mean, we're not supposed to question that. Yeah. We're supposed to just keep on sending it to them.
I'll tell you this. Altruism is incompatible with capitalism, and they want to be seen as altruistic. They want to be seen as, we are the world, and we are going to bind the world's needs up to the needs of the country. But they're putting, you see, what has happened now with Donald Trump coming into the mix is that Donald Trump is putting them on blast, as they say. using a colloquial expression I see out here on the street, that Donald Trump is putting America first. And so the contrast between what Donald Trump is doing, because MAGA calls them out. After you have Donald Trump saying, make America great again, then you have something to compare it with. Is that what they're doing? Are they doing things to make America great again? And if they are interested in that, why are they not, let's say the 8 that were on that stage last week, why are they not then backing Donald Trump, particularly with the attacks on this man? I don't have respect for any of them, and I would never vote for him, whether Donald Trump is running or not. I would refuse to vote if they have the choice on the other side of the ledger. I already have written off it. Biden already written him off, because 2 years of that is enough. And you can stop talking about Hunter Biden on the television set. All you Republicans that are talking about Hunter Biden, all you're doing right there is, in fact, doing theatrics. Because nobody's voted for Hunter Biden. Yeah, he's crook. He's corrupt. He's a crook. He's corrupted. But that isn't. But Hunter Biden doesn't have any power except the power he exercises through his father, and that's where the corruption has to be labeled there. You want to move from the top of the chain and move down, fine, but don't start down here talking about this nonsense, because you don't have any. That becomes with Hunter Biden. It becomes more of a civil matter and a criminal matter than it would be on a federal level. On the federal level, we're talking about the President of the United States here. And we're talking about using the impeachment process to remove Joe Biden from power. Now, those of you saying we ought to be impeached, look, let me tell you something. This is beyond impeachment. You're talking about we ought to impeach Joe Biden. You're saying we ought to do what then? Do you know what you're saying in saying that? You're saying we ought to accuse him of wrongdoing. The wrongdoing is out there for everybody to see it. We're not making an accusation here. The fact of the matter is the man is on tape. You understand that? The man was out there bragging about, telling the persons in Burisma over in Ukraine that if they don't, in fact, stop the investigation of his son, they don't get money that's been appropriated by Congress to Ukraine, and he will stop it because his son is being investigated. He's on tape saying that, and they have not investigated him yet under the impeachment claim. I'm not calling for his impeachment. I'm talking about the man being removed through the use of the impeachment process, and that's a whole different proposition which these scholars don't understand. I'm going to teach it to them. Because I'm sick of them talking this nonsense on TV. These television scholars. John, am I getting too excited?
Well, I'm glad because I think it's this animated kind of conversation. I think that the song actually brings about because you know so much more about than other people, and what I think.
There's nobody on my level in this country.
No, I mean
I'm gonna tell you that right now. They're not on this level.
I'd back that boast. I mean, I really would. It's not a boast. I think it's like what Babe Ruth said. It's not bragging if you can do it. Right?
They don't say anything. So, why are they so quiet?
Because they don't see. They don't want to respond to anything because they think that if I actually react to this, I'm validating them. Well, but then by not reacting to it, they're also sending a signal to a lot of people that they know they're out of their league.
Yeah, they know I'm out here. But look, it's a kindred spirit. Now, look, I come out of the protest tradition. I listen to it. It dates me, but I listened to it in the 60s. I was there. I told you I was there in Washington. I went there to support what I thought was wrongdoing, that they needed a chance there. And that's before we had all this illegal immigration, because the migrants are now doing jobs that the citizens did. You know what? I was out there in those fields. I picked tomatoes. I picked peas. I worked for Green Giant Pea Company. And I understand the farm working, because that's how I paid for my I worked in the summertime on those farms. And I worked side by side with some of the, you call them Hispanics now, but that's a term that's been born out of some other history, but I could relate to Cesar Chavez. And when I went to Washington to support Cesar Chavez, I was was I was I think I was had to be in the 70s, so I was at the high school at that point. I started out in junior high school, and I moved to the high school at that time. So it had to have been 72, I would think, 71, 72, somewhere around there. And Joan Baez, I can remember the words she was saying. Some of the words she said was it was just a lie, and we've had plenty. We don't want more of the same. No more genocide. Excuse me 1 minute. No more genocide in my name. And that was back in the 70s. So I can relate to what the song today, because that's a tradition where the moralists in the country would stand up against wrongdoing. And it was not a Democrat or Republican. It was not a black and white. All the stuff they keep throwing at the American people, all these distractions that they have going. These are these are all distractions. Politicians use distractions. Houdini. These are the Houdini. These are the Houdinis of our society, and they do a lot of the Houdini kind of things. They are the experts at throwing a stone and hiding their hand and acting like something is other than what it is. They'll do a distraction, and before you know it, they are making it appear to be something that is not. They're making it appear that the racism is because of the hatred of color. I mean, thank you, John. Appreciate you. You know, it's really something when you have the people who were the friends of the. You have Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a friend of Byrd, Harry Byrd, and Byrd was a Kleagle in the Klan up until age 46. Half the man's life. The man lived to be 92 years old. So half his life, he's half point of his life at 46 years of age. He was in the Klan up until age 46. He was elected to the Congress as a member of the Klan. And I have to tell you this because maybe you don't know this history, but I do. Every member of the Ku Klux Klan was a member of the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean everybody in the Democratic Party was a Klan, but it means that there were just certain people in that group. The white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, no Catholics were in there, no Jews were in there, and believe it or not, Clarence Thomas was not in there. I know you're gonna try to act like John. You're gonna try to act like Clarence Thomas was in there.
But you ever seen that? Did you ever see that skit that David Chappelle did years ago?
Yeah.
The black man who was blind,
Right.
who belonged to the Klan.
Right.
Was it Clayton Bigby or something like that?
Right.
Yeah, it was hilarious. He didn't know he was nobody told him.
Yeah, there are a lot of points to be made here. I have to tell you this is a tradition here, folks. This is not. I was proud of the country to make this song the number one song in the country. Number two. Here's number two, John. Have you heard? I sent this to you, John. Because I don't know.
Jason Aldean. Yeah.
That song is number two. I'm proud of you, America, because it tells me that you are waking up. The number two song, this person that is singing about, don't try this in a small town. because you'll be taken down. So all that burning you're doing and all that stealing and walking out with people's stuff and you're not paying for it, you shouldn't be doing it anywhere. But what that song is saying is that try it in these small towns and see how far you get. Now, a lot of people want to say, well, he's talking about racism, and look at this, and they show the person walking out with some stuff. Well, who's walking out with the stuff? John, who's walking out with the stuff? And they're going to act like the guy the song is racist because he's saying that stuff you allowing in these big cities. And why is it being allowed in the big cities? Let me tell you why. For the same reason that the Klan was riding in the southern states. The Democratic Party is in fact running those big cities, and if they go out there with the club against those persons doing those things, they are fighting their supporters. That's why. Politically, it doesn't work. And so in the big cities, go look at who's running New York. Who's running? Look at this. We got electrons, we got protons, and we have neutrons. And then in these political positions, we got morons. So go look in Chicago. I don't know what y'all doing over there. I said y'all. I don't know what y'all doing over there. You got rid of a bad apple, threw her out, and then you brought this guy in here who's worse than she is. They just couldn't see themselves voting for the person who's objecting to the direction that the city is going in, but they had to vote by party line. You know why? Because the people have been driven out of their mind. And they've been taught, this is what you've been taught. You can deny it, but here's what you've been taught. You've been taught to vote their interests and not your interests. You've been trained that way. And that's another thing I will come back and say about this song, and that is that you can try to pigeonhole the singer, rich man.
Oliver Anthony.
Oliver Anthony. Yeah, Oliver Anthony. You can try to pigeonhole him. Is he a Democrat? Is he a liberal? Is he a conservative? Is he a Republican? You can try to pigeonhole him. He refuses that labeling because what this man is trying to do is speak to the problem. And this trying to get into these little segmented groups where you got this segment saying this and this faction saying the other. I think they need to go and read Fairless Paper number 10 that was picked up in a conversation that Alexander Hamilton started in Fairless Paper number 9, and which was talking about factions and so on and so forth. And then go and read number 9, starting with Hamilton, see what Hamilton had to say, and then see where it's picked up by the father of the Constitution, James Madison, who picked it up and continued that conversation and carried it beyond the limits of Hamilton. Hamilton carried down the road quite a bit now, but it was left up to James Madison to continue that conversation. And number 10, James Madison writes it out of the 29 that he wrote of the Federalist Papers. And what they talk about in 9 and 10 are those factions, the danger of factions. And the most dangerous one is the majority, because then you could have mobocracy. And they had to figure out a way to restrain that, and without becoming oppressive in the restraint. I'm gonna say something else here about Alan Dershowitz, to try to bring him out into the open. Alan Dershowitz does not understand why we have the Electoral College, because he's calling for its removal from the political setting, and that's what Nancy Pelosi is calling for, and the rest of these liberals are calling for, because they don't understand why it was put in place there. The Electoral College is a brilliant response to the danger of factions, to limit the power of factions by the Electoral College, which in fact makes it impossible to have one faction running the country. You have to have an alliance of factions. So you control. How do you control a majority faction? You control majority factions by having other majorities in place, so the majorities can confront majorities. Each state's majority has been counted in terms of how we select the president of the United States, for example. That's the Electoral College, whether you understand that or not. You need to understand it before you get out here yapping about getting rid of it. That's what Charles Schumer is talking about. The man wants to pack the Supreme Court the same way because we got dunce caps running this country. You know, that's what y'all don't like to hear him saying, because you still think you're in junior high school, where you choose your leaders based upon whether or not you like what they say, and you like their personality. That's how you vote, by their personalities, and whether or not you like. He's too abrasive. He's too whatever. They want the man to take the slings and arrows and not fight back, and that is not Donald Trump. And the people do not understand that they need this man to the exclusion of all the rest of them. And I think that they have the mere. Here's what I saw last week, is that Donald Trump, by absenting himself, forced them to show their pettiness, because they had to deal with him in his absence. And while he was not there on the stage, he was there in their mouths, and they couldn't get rid of him, because if you can't peck away at his numbers, you cannot, in fact, overcome him in terms of taking over the numbers that you need in order to take over the nomination in the Republican Party, which I can tell you right now, that nomination is over. But based upon constitutional and legal circumstance, these people are outlaws, so I can't say that that's how they're going to operate, because these people don't care about the law, and they don't care about the Constitution either. So I'm saying, as long as it comes down to legalese and constitutional rights, which are not guaranteed unless you got willing to back it up. I mean, they said some things in the Declaration of Independence. It wasn't backed up until it was written in 1776. It wasn't backed up until 1783. And I have to tell you this. You can say what you want to. I know what you're saying out here. I disagree with everything you're saying. I disagree with the history that you have out there. My reading of history is totally different than their reading of history. That's why I was in trouble with the administration all the time, because I was not going to go in there and teach that nonsense. I told them that too. I'm not teaching that. And there were a lot of problems. I'm shocked right now I was able to retire after so many years in public school, because I was not buying. I knew the information, and I knew what they were saying was wrong.
Because I'll insert myself here too. I knew our mutual acquaintance had introduced us years ago over at U of M, the safety officer.
Yeah.
He told me that you actually stood up for him at U of M.
Yeah.
And because they were trying to railroad him, and you stepped in,
Yeah.
he really was touched by that, and he told. That made him. He made him like you heroic to him. So I remember him telling me about that.
I forget. He went by a Nigerian name, but he's American. But he worked at the University of Michigan. Let that out. But I try to stand up for those that are being wronged, and the consequences of that has to fall where they fall. But I don't like to see people mistreated. And I have been always out there on an island somewhat in terms of some of the stands I've taken. I don't need a majoritarian backup in order to stand up for what I think is right. I'm gonna do that regardless of the consequences. Sometimes it's full steam ahead and damn the torpedoes, and that's what I see in Donald Trump, and I admire him for that. And I can overlook. In fact, I don't even have to overlook what the man is doing in terms of the language he uses. I don't care anything about that. I don't use salty language, but I will tell you that what you say when you use locker room language, I'm not bothered by that. I'm as focused as this person was in that song. Oliver Anthony, I commend you, because I can see in your singing here that you're not trapped by taking sides in an argument that should be about a single issue: what's right and what's wrong. And his indictment in that song is my indictment. Both parties. And I wish it were possible, but it's not going to be possible. I wish it were possible for both sides to lose. Both sides deserve to lose. And I think it's an abomination for either party to be putting these titles on there on the party name. The Democratic Party. Where's the what Democratic Party with Nancy Pelosi in it? With Charles, you call him Chuck. I'm not calling him Chuck. I don't know him. John, Chuck Schumer, like he's next door. Chuck.
Yeah, like I really don't think you really want the average serf to actually call him by that. You know? They have to go, Lord God.
Yeah,
Lord God. You know.
I'm calling him Charles Schumer. I'm gonna call him by that Chuck stuff is to make you feel like you know him, like it's a long lost relative, a cousin, a distant cousin. Chuck Schumer. I don't know Chuck.
I don't want to know that guy.
Chuck. What's that thing about Woodchuck? No, it's Charles. And all the liberals have these names that make you feel familiar. LBJ. Everybody knows who that is. JFK. Everybody knows who that is. Now, if I said Ara WR. Does that resonate with anybody? No. That's Ronald Wilson Reagan. And if they put it out there, they then want to start talking about every one and part of his name got 6 in it, so therefore he was 666. This kind of stuff that's going on. Passing for intelligence. But yet you got people out here fighting. This man is fighting through his music. That's what I see. Anthony Oliver is fighting through his music for a different political paradigm in the country. And I give him a lot of credit for having done that. He is making, really, if you really want to unsell the waters, then you got to make enemies on both sides. You don't have any political friends. They don't have any political friends. Look at how they're now jumping on whites in this country. Look at the Democratic Party today.
I think it's funny. The white establishment of the liberal Democrats are all white, but they want to denigrate white people. I mean, they're like it's like have you looked in a mirror the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, John, yeah. They use that as a battering ram. They don't believe in none of that stuff. George Wallace never believed in the things he was doing, standing in the schoolhouse. All that was theatrics. You ought to go read some of those conversations they had between John F. Kennedy and Ross Barnett when they put James Meredith into the school at Ole Miss. What they were talking about behind closed doors. What they were talking about is the TV part of it. Barnett was telling John F. Kennedy, can you pull your guns out so they can see me in Mississippi, being forced to move to the side and let James Meredith in there. He didn't care if James Meredith was in there or not. He didn't have no children there. And if he did, James Meredith is one person. How many persons go to Ole Miss, which has a better football team now than it had then because you got an integrated team now. You got players from everywhere. And they also at University of Alabama. You can't tell me that this man is winning more championships because he's a better coach than Bear Bryant. The reason why the coach at University of Alabama is winning all those championships is because they're no longer limiting the talent pool to a single group of people coming into university. And you owe that to Bear Bryant because Bear Bryant wanted to open up the football team. You know why? Because every year he had a great team in the SEC, but every time they got out of the SEC, paying the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Rice Bowl, or whatever bowl they came up with, they were out there getting killed in those bowl games because now they're playing teams like USC and other teams, and they were getting killed on the football field. Why? Those guys running by them. So Bear Bryant had a vested interest because his contract says his contract is based upon how many games he wins. If you can't put the players out there to win the games outside of the SEC, and if you're playing in the SEC, it'd be a different energy. But at some point, SEC got to play somebody else, and the competition drove that. I'm telling you that these persons were out there playing. This was a theatrical thing they were doing. They didn't believe. Oh, George Wallace had a friend in the background. Who's that friend that? Who was that person that George Washington had? The person that was a confidant of Martha Washington. You ought to go read some of the things Martha Washington wrote. I'm going to read this sometime. It's going to be very interesting to read some things by Martha Washington. But Billy Daniels, I think his name was a confidant of George Washington. Everywhere Washington went, his companion was with him. Now, he was doing things that blacks did at that time period, but Washington considered him a part of his family. Now, I'm not excusing anything that was going on in terms of the ownership, but but if you judge people by the standards of another time period, everybody's indicted. They're indict these people, right? They can indict people today back in that time period because they would not never be talking about aborting any children. There was not a discussion back in that time period. All you got your nose up in the air and stuff like that because you want to go back and look and they're in a practice no longer being practiced today, and then claim some hierarchy of morality based on the fact your standards have changed over time to those standards back in that time period, without judging the people within their time period. I'll tell you one thing that George Washington did not do, and put a stop to it. As an inheritor of the slaves on his plantation, he did not break up a single family and would not do it. When he found out that had been done prior to him taking over the ownership, because it was inheritance on his part, George Washington was horrified to learn they were taking this one and then putting him over here and putting the other one somewhere else, and George Washington in the wagon put a stop to it. Has that story been written? They want to indict the framers because they don't understand the framers. They don't understand the first American dilemma. Yeah, you got Garner Murder writing about the American dilemma in 1944 in the 2-volume work he put out, the Swedish sociologist put out in 1944. But the first dilemma that they faced was, what are people that are saying in their document, all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and out in that field are those slaves. And that contradiction and that divide, that void between the two, the ocean of difference between the claim and the practice, they're trying to mend that under difficult circumstances. And they did that by writing, listen very carefully here, to 2 anti-slavery documents. And those documents are, and I quote myself on it, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And those were 2 anti-slavery documents. Now, the scholars are saying something different, but I tell you this, they better not say it here.
Thing is, I think our founders drew from history. They learned from history's lessons, and I think they realized they couldn't have a country built upon slave labor where it actually be safe, because let's face it, they had several slave revolts in the ancient Rome, and ancient Rome was known for slavery. Bulk of everything done by anybody was not by paid laborers; it was done by slaves at those points, wasn't it? So,
yes, John, you're right. See, that's John. John never ceases to amaze me. I come to the studio with these topics, and there are very few times I've been able to go into an area and there's a void here at the studio. The idea of a house divided against itself cannot stand. It was not a creation of Abraham Lincoln. They had gone through that in terms of understanding the divide they had between those that were slave owners and those who were not slave owners when they brought the country together. And the first American dilemma was not what Myrtle was writing about, Garner Myrtle. Go read his 2-volume work called The American Dilemma, meaning a paradox between what you say and what you practice. They understood that dilemma. But they also understood that if they did not, in fact, make compromises, they could not bring the country together to create a country around something other than the fact everybody in the 13 states were married to King George III. That's gone now. In '83, that issue is over. So that glue and that mortar, that concrete that was gluing that together, that was now gone. The question is what's going to unite the country now? And that was all these different interests had to be brought together, and that's what they're doing. I give the song here tremendous credit for that reason, because I think we have to talk about what will, in fact, unite the country and not keep the country divided, which these politicians are doing because it's to their advantage that they do it. I will tell you this as well, that whenever you have a politician saying they want to bring the country together, vote against them. That's not true. It is not in the interest of any politician to bring the country together. Their interest necessarily, because they are politicians, is inherent in the fact that they are politicians that keep the country divided. There is no politician in this country right now, I'm saying this out in front, there's no politician that benefits from the unity of the country. You know why? Because if they're united, then all eyes are on them. And if all eyes on them, then all this Houdini stuff that they do to throw the proverbial stone and hide their hand, like they do with this, like they did the other day when they passed I said this last week, they passed an anti-inflation act. They passed a bill that was against inflation. And I said last week what they were doing was passing a law against their own behavior because the inflation was caused by them. And how is it caused by them? It's caused by them because they refuse, in this history that we have of being an anti-tax country, born out of that. That's the creation of the country, the idea of taxing people behind their back, and they don't have anything to say about it. Nobody can vote for taxes is ever going to vote for it if they voted on themselves. So even if they say they were mad about taxation without representation, they were objecting to taxation with representation. If you doubt that, go and look in 1794 with the Whiskey Rebellion. And the Shays Rebellion. There were three. I said there were three rebellions. I was trying to recall the third one. There were three rebellions before 1812. Shays Rebellion is what brought the states into understanding that what they had done in the Articles of Confederation was insufficient, because when Shays went up and rebelled in Massachusetts, they didn't have an umbrella protection. They couldn't come to rescue Massachusetts, and Massachusetts was vulnerable. So they realize now that there's a fly in the ointment, and they got to fix that and get a circumstance that would, in fact, do what the Articles did. What the Articles did was restrain power by certainly not releasing any power to the central government. The government could not do anything unless they had a unanimous agreement to, in fact, act. Now, some of you don't understand this, but government must get its permission to even act today. And its permission to act is given to it by the Constitution of the United States. Without that, everything it does is illegal. Because the illegality is based upon the constitutionality of the country. If it's unconstitutional, it's illegal. Everything that is unconstitutional is illegal, although what they've done here is made things that are illegal based upon the Constitution. What they've done here is that they have prescribed legality to it. You can't have a president of the United States brought before. I'm going to say this right here. How many of you scholars agree with me on this? Not that I care that you disagree, because if you disagree, you're not going to do it publicly. I can tell you that right now. You're not coming out in public to disagree. You may talk among your friends about disagreeing. You're not going to come here and disagree with it. They cannot constitutionally charge Donald Trump with anything. And I will tell you another thing. How many of you agree with this point? that Gerald Ford, yes, he did pardon. I know everybody's saying, well, he should not have pardoned Richard Nixon. Well, I agree with that. But I agree for a different reason than you do. You're saying he should not have they should have gone with Nixon to put him in a court. Couldn't. But let me tell you this: they could not have done that. The reason why you didn't have to you shouldn't have had a pardon of Richard Nixon is because you cannot impeach, you cannot bring a president to court in a court of law for what he did as president unless you first of all carry it through the impeachment process. And that is necessary because you have to remove the division of power out of the way so as to then bring the president down to a civilian level. As long as he has not been impeached and convicted, and through conviction based upon specific charges in Article 2, and based on those specific charges, Alan Dershowitz, remove him from office because it's automatic if those charges are specific to the removal of the president. Then once he's removed, he is now a civilian, and then therein can be tried. But without going through that process, the president cannot be tried for what he did in office. And that's why I'm saying here that see what Nixon did, and I need to go into that at some point too. And what Nixon did was that Nixon resigned because he realized that if it came to a vote in the Senate, they could not politically come behind and support him, although they didn't have the numbers politically, they didn't have the numbers of Democrats in there to bring him down by 2/3 vote, and didn't have and Republicans would not have been able to side with the Democrats to get him out of there. But the way they did that, they went and made it politically unpalatable to back Nixon. So they're going to get him by taking away his support in the Senate, because they had the numbers in the House, only need a majority vote, but you need 2/3 vote in the Senate. And they want to take that away by making it to him hot potato, but they couldn't touch it. But Nixon then resigned. Once he resigned, that case is closed. What he did without the impeachment, and you can only impeach him when he's in office. The Constitution says the president, the president, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office upon impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. And Alan Dershowitz thinks that's an impeachment clause. That's not an impeachment clause. That's a removal clause. The impeachment clause is in the Article 1, and there's nothing that's specific to what you can impeach a president for. It's open-ended because it's only about the accusation at that level. If you're going to try to use the accusation as a part of removal, the process then is up the ante, go to a different part of the process. And if you want to remove, then you're in Article 2, and I'll tell you next week about why that is true. But I want to go back to this point here to close out. We have some people now that are standing up on behalf of the country. That's what Oliver Anthony did. And that's what this other song is doing in terms of don't try that in a small town. They're uniting the country and telling people to stand down from this behavior that's tearing this country apart. These are the patriots doing that. And they're not saying they're Democrats or the Republicans. What they're doing is just simply putting to music their protest of what's going on here and protesting it. And by speaking to the energy in the country, that song is number 2. And the song by Anthony Oliver is number 1. Number 1 and number 2, these two protest songs have kicked out all the rock and roll stuff, and now people are singing about the country and putting that on Front Street. Watch this, because they got to do something now. This energy right now is moving toward people are expressing their patriotism, and the politicians cannot stand that because they need to keep the division going in order for them to get elected over and over and over again, which is what they're doing. Okay, I got to get out of here as always, running out of time, and I will be back next week with another edition of this program. But before that, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.